Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today, we're going to be tackling kind of a controversial topic.
Yeah.
We're looking at this article called The Disappearance of Womanhood. And right off the bat,
Ooh, that's an intense title.
I know, right? And it's a little bit provocative, but the article is really more about how the definition of womanhood is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily that it's going away, and I think it's really interesting to look at what might be lost in that change as things evolve. So we're not here to take sides or anything.
Yeah, definitely not.
We just want to present the ideas in the article and see, what resonates with you as a listener. What do you think?
Well, I think the article does a really great job of bringing up some really difficult questions. Like right away, it starts talking about the evolution of feminism.
Yeah.
And we can all agree the movement has come so far, like suffrage and, getting women in the workplace.
Huge, huge wins for sure.
But then the article asks, like, has the focus of the movement shifted? Like, have we gone from just wanting equality to wanting to completely dismantle traditional roles?
It really makes you think, right? Like, progress is important.
Absolutely.
But is there a downside to this evolution? Like, what are we maybe losing in the process?
And that's exactly what leads into this idea of a femininity crisis, which the source dives into pretty deeply.
Oh, yeah, it spends a lot of time on that.
Basically, the argument is that qualities that are traditionally associated with women, things like caregiving and nurturing,
Yeah.
even emotional intelligence.
Yeah, those softer skills that are so important but sometimes overlooked.
Right. Those qualities are being devalued in today's world.
So it's not just about the roles that women are or aren't filling, but it's about how we as a society value certain traits.
Exactly. And the source uses a really powerful example to illustrate this whole point. It talks about mothers and their crucial role in child development, like in the early years.
Right.
And it even cites all these studies showing that kids really thrive when they have consistent maternal care.
That's a really good point because it kind of challenges the idea that any role is completely made up by society, right?
That's
Like if biology plays a role in some of these things,
Mhm.
does undervaluing those traditionally feminine traits actually hurt us as a society?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
are we missing out on the benefits of empathy, nurturing, all of that, just because we sometimes dismiss them as being weak or less important?
Yeah. And are we pressuring women to suppress those qualities in order to be successful?
It really makes you think about how we define success, especially when it comes to women.
Yeah. And the article takes it a step further, right? It
Yeah.
talks about modern feminism and some of the potential downsides.
Yeah, what's interesting is it doesn't say feminism is bad or anything. It acknowledges all the good things that have come from it.
Right.
But it does question whether pushing to eliminate all differences between men and women is actually a good thing.
So instead of focusing on what makes us different, are we kind of overlooking those differences and pretending they don't exist?
That's what the source is saying, and it goes on to argue that ignoring those differences, like the biological ones, the psychological ones, even the social ones, it's a lot to just brush aside.
It doesn't actually create equality. It creates confusion. And sometimes, modern feminism can frame men as the enemy,
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
which could alienate a lot of potential allies. You know what I mean?
It's true. If men are constantly being told they're the oppressors, are they really going to want to help?
And the source talks about this idea of partnership versus dominance, like finding common ground, working together towards a shared goal of equality.
I like that. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar kind of a thing.
Exactly. And the article also brings up this whole boss lady culture and how it might be masking some of the burnout and societal pressures that women face.
Yeah, it looks empowering on the surface,
Oh, totally.
but is having it all really all it's cracked up to be?
The source really challenges us to look deeper. I mean, is it really empowering, or are we just putting more and more pressure on women to be everything to everyone?
Yeah, and that's where this whole idea of the myth of having it all comes in.
Oh, totally. Like, we're told that we should be able to have these super demanding careers and be perfect mothers and partners and have it all together, like our own well-being on top of everything else.
Right, and the source is saying, like, that's just not realistic.
Yeah, it's setting us up to feel like failures, basically, if we're not crushing it in every single area of life.
And what about the women who choose to prioritize family or their own personal fulfillment over a high-powered career?
Yeah. Are they somehow less than?
Are their contributions not as valuable? It's like we've created this really narrow definition of success.
That a lot of women just don't fit into.
Exactly.
It's interesting, right? Because it's almost like we've swung too far in the other direction.
How do you mean?
Like we went from devaluing women in the home to now maybe devaluing women who choose to focus on the home.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like we can't win.
That's a really interesting point, and this is where the source brings in some science to back up its arguments.
Okay, yeah, it does talk about that.
It highlights research about the impact that mothers have on child development, especially in those early years.
Right.
Like, there's all this evidence that those early bonds with mom are super important for kids.
So it's not just a nice thing to have, it's actually crucial for their development.
Exactly. It impacts their emotional development, their sense of security, even their ability to learn and grow.
Wow, so it's not just about warm, fuzzy feelings. There's real science behind it.
And the source uses this research to say, like, hey, mothers aren't replaceable. Anyone can just step in and provide the same level of care.
So we need to recognize that what mothers do is unique and essential.
For their kids and for society as a whole.
It's like we've taken it for granted for so long, all the work that mothers do.
Absolutely. And the source goes on to talk about another big topic, that whole nature versus nurture debate.
Oh yeah, it goes there.
And it dives into the research about the biological differences between men and women.
Because they do exist, right?
They do. And the source is saying, like, these differences aren't something to be afraid of or to try and erase.
Okay.
We need to understand them and appreciate them.
So instead of seeing these differences as like a problem or something that divides us,
We can actually see them as complementary.
like they can work together.
Exactly. By recognizing and valuing those differences, we can create a world that's more harmonious and fulfilling for everyone.
I love that.
Instead of trying to force everyone into the same mold, we can celebrate what makes each gender unique.
Right, because men and women bring different strengths and perspectives to the table.
Exactly. And that leads into the source's main message, which is all about hope and finding balance.
Okay, yeah, the tone of the article definitely shifts towards the end.
It acknowledges all the progress that's been made, but says, hey, we need to figure out how to integrate the best of both worlds.
So the advancements in women's rights and also the valuable parts of traditional femininity.
It's not about going backwards. It's about moving forward in a more balanced and holistic way. So how do we do that? Because the article gives some pretty concrete suggestions, right?
It boils it all down to three main points.
Okay.
First, we need to celebrate the differences between genders.
So stop trying to make everyone the same.
Exactly. Recognize and value what each gender brings to the table.
I like that.
Second, we need to redefine what success means.
Because it's not just about climbing the corporate ladder.
No, it's about honoring those caregiving roles.
Yeah.
Recognizing the importance of family and personal fulfillment.
Yeah, it's about broadening our perspective of what a meaningful life looks like.
And then finally, the source talks about the importance of partnerships between men and women.
Not seeing each other as the enemy.
Right. It's about collaboration and mutual respect, working together to create a better society for everyone.
I mean, it makes sense we're all in this together, right?
And true equality comes from working together, not from tearing each other down.
Well said. So after all this discussion about the source material,
It seems like womanhood is definitely changing, but whether it's disappearing,
that's still up for debate.
what do you think, listener? Does any of this resonate with you? What new questions has this sparked for you? This whole conversation has really got me thinking about how the article makes us really think about what we believe about womanhood.
It definitely pushes you to think a little deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, the biggest thing was that femininity crisis idea.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's easy to just dismiss those traditional qualities like nurturing empathy, as not being as important.
Especially these days, yeah.
Yeah, with all the talk about leaning in and being a boss lady. It's almost like those softer qualities are taboo.
Right, and the article does a good job of explaining why those qualities are actually important for society.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Who's usually the one teaching kids empathy and compassion, creating those safe spaces where they can grow?
It's usually women, right?
And the article is saying we need to recognize that and value it instead of pushing women to be more like men.
It's not saying women should stay home or that they can't be successful in a career.
No, not at all.
But it's recognizing that there are so many different ways to be a woman and so many ways to contribute.
Exactly, and we need to celebrate those differences.
And that whole pressure to have it all,
Oh, yeah.
it can be so damaging.
It's like we're telling women they need to be superhuman, excel at work, be the perfect mom, have a great social life, and look amazing while doing it.
It's an impossible standard, and the article's saying that it's holding women back instead of empowering them.
I think a lot of women feel exhausted and inadequate, like they're constantly failing.
It really makes you wonder if we need to rethink what success means.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it's not about doing it all, but about finding what truly matters to you.
And pursuing it.
And that brings us back to that final question from the article.
Which was?
How can we create a society where women can embrace all parts of themselves, from leaders to nurturers, without shame or judgment?
That's a powerful question.
It really is, and it's not about finding the one right answer.
No, it's about having these conversations, challenging our own biases.
And working together to create a more equal world for everyone.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this whole concept of womanhood.
We hope you found it thought-provoking.
And maybe even challenging.
Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's about learning and questioning and having those open conversations that can lead to real change.
So keep thinking, keep exploring.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.